big jet in.
Here's a cheer going up now as a big jet lands with the United States of America on it.
Clear blue sky and a warm sun. Beautiful day now, just a beautiful day.
Now turning on to Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark. I was on Simmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the president as he made his way toward the trademark.
The motorcade is now turning on to Houston Street, heading for the corner of Elm Street, and the crowds are just beginning to thin out.
The President of the United States, and what a crowd, what a tremendous welcome he's getting now. And there's Jackie, she's getting just as big a welcome, and the crowd is absolutely going wild. This is a friendly crowd in downtown Dallas as the President and the First Lady pass by. There is Lyndon Johnson and Lady Bird passing by.
John F. Kennedy, better known as just JFK, was the 35th President of the United States of America. He was born on May 29, 1917 in Brookline, Massachusetts, to a family heavily involved in politics. His father, Joseph P. Kennedy, served as the United States Ambassador to the United Kingdom, providing the young Kennedy with a political role model from very early on in his life. From a young age, Kennedy showed a passion for public service and leadership, which would end up being one of his main attributes as a president. However, with rumors of scandal and controversy surrounding the future politician, as with most public figures, many believe he may not have been as perfectly suited for his role as others may think. In fact, JFK might just be one of the most controversial presidents the United States has ever seen. JFK was born into a life that can only be described as upper class. His family was defined by great wealth, Roman Catholicism, patriarchal control, and, of course, democratic politics. From the day he was born, there was little doubt about the life of privilege he would go on to lead. Joseph Kennedy Sr., his father, made his fortune on Wall Street. His morals were often brought into question, as he didn't even try to hide his affairs and bouts of overspending from the world. In fact, his children would go on to say that he encouraged the lifestyle. His mother, Rose Kennedy, was the daughter of the mayor of Boston, John Fitzgerald, and she was more concerned with how her family was portrayed to the public than anything else. She would do anything in her power to make them appear as the perfect American household, despite her husband's unfaithfulness. As a kid, John was more inclined to spend his free time reading than playing outside with the other children. According to his teachers, he had a creative wit about him and was always more mature than his classmates. Kennedy attended private schools throughout his academic years. However, he failed to show any interest in his education, and as he got older, his grades began slipping more and more. Even so, after graduating high school, John headed off to Princeton in 1936, one of the most reputable universities in the world. There, he began adopting his father's habits and showed more interest in girls than in improving his academics. After just a few weeks, Kennedy dropped out due to poor health. His next attempt at a degree took place a few months later at Harvard, arguably the most prestigious university in the world. He quickly realized that he was more interested in the social scene, where he was extremely popular, than actually studying and achieving good grades. During a tour of Europe in his freshman year, John finally discovered his true passion: international politics. As his family had no shortage of money, John spent a lot of time traveling the world and learning as much about foreign affairs as he possibly could. He visited Italy and Germany during his college years and even questioned refugees from the Spanish Civil War. 2 years later, he would explore France, Russia, Turkey, Latvia, and Poland, writing detailed letters to his father regarding his experiences. Kennedy showed an obvious enthusiasm for politics that only grew as he encountered more people and social issues. In 1940, after returning home from his travels in order to complete his degree, the situation in Europe grew worse and worse as World War II raged on. John's father, who was acting as Franklin Delano Roosevelt's ambassador to the court of St. James, was under scrutiny for his appeasement of Hitler and for publicly stating that Britain would be destroyed by the war. John had developed his own ideas regarding England's response to Hitler's rule. In his final year at university, he developed these ideas in his Harvard thesis, which then went on to be published by his father. His book was called Why England Slept, and it immediately became a bestseller in the United States. In it, John claimed that the isolationist character of the British population led to Hitler's appeasement, not the political leadership of the country. His ideas were deemed perceptive by some and simplistic by others. Even though John had finally discovered his passion and had started making a name for himself on the political scene with the release of his book, he had always felt an obligation to serve his country. For this reason, he joined the U.S. Navy between 1941 and 1945. He enrolled straight after graduating from Harvard and was assigned to the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington, D.C. In 1942, Kennedy volunteered for the Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron, where he was promoted to lieutenant. A year later, Kennedy took command of PT-109 in the Pacific Theater. However, during a night mission, the boat was struck by a Japanese destroyer and perished. Kennedy initiated and led the rescue of his crew, earning himself a medal for bravery. Kennedy suffered severe injuries of his own from the attack, but once he recovered, he served an additional 2 years in the Navy before his honorable discharge in 1945. John always claimed that his time in the Navy was the most rewarding work he had ever done. It gave him a deeper understanding of the sacrifices made by men and women across the country. 20 years after his discharge, John famously said, "I can imagine no more rewarding a career, and any man who may be asked in this century what he did to make his life worthwhile, I think, can respond with a good deal of pride and satisfaction. I served in the United States Navy." After his discharge, John continued to make a name for himself in American politics. It was thanks to this newfound fame that the future president would meet his future wife, Jackie Kennedy, in 1952. At the time, Jackie was a reporter and camera girl for the Washington Times-Herald, and she was tasked with interviewing the young politician. The pair hit it off as soon as they were introduced, and just a few months later, they announced their engagement. The wedding was definitely one to remember, with over 600 people, many of whom were high-class social figures, in attendance for the ceremony, and close to 1,000 people at the reception. Even though the Kennedys tried their best to make their marriage appear perfect to the public, it was evidently clear that the pair had their fair share of problems. Just 2 years into their marriage, cracks started to appear. Even considering the multitude of affair allegations that clouded their relationship, Jackie claimed that the worst betrayal she had ever experienced from John was when he had not shown up for the birth of their daughter, Arabella. It was not a happy moment in any way for the future First Lady, as she experienced a stillborn birth while being without her husband in the hospital. It would later come to light that John had been on a yacht in the Mediterranean at the time. On top of not being there for his wife when she needed him the most, John was unfaithful on more than one occasion. Having grown up watching his father pursue a hedonistic lifestyle, it's no surprise that John developed similar habits himself in his adult years. Marilyn Monroe and Kennedy were two of the most iconic figures during their time. They were both known for their charm and good looks. However, those who knew them claimed that the pair connected on a deeper level as well. Their relationship began in the early 1960s when Kennedy was a rising star in the political world and Monroe was a budding actress. Even though they first met in 1954, it wasn't until 1961 that their paths crossed again. This time, they stayed in touch. At the time, Kennedy was the newly elected President of the United States, and Monroe was becoming more and more of a Hollywood icon. Their friendship turned into an affair, which led to intense public scrutiny. Kennedy was married at the time and had grown up as a strict Catholic. For this reason, his ethics and values were brought into question. On top of this, Marilyn was an American sex symbol. Many thought that John was ruining his reputation by associating himself with someone who did not match his social class. The affair rumors with Monroe were so surprising to the nation as the scandal broke just a few months after Kennedy was elected as the 35th U.S. president. The battle had been fierce between the Republican Party and their candidate Richard Nixon. However, John's ideas of economic and social reform convinced the majority of the country, as he had made promises to tackle demanding issues, including poverty and the Cold War. John had always had a talent for public speaking. This played a major role in his election. He really connected with citizens across the country during his debates, as he always spoke with charisma and poise. On top of this, his campaign team used modern marketing techniques and media strategies, helping them to reach a much wider audience. Kennedy's campaign was very well funded thanks to the wealth of his family. As president, John focused primarily on civil rights issues, the space race, and the war between Russia and the United States. He established the Peace Corps and pushed the idea of a nuclear ban treaty. During his time, Kennedy also faced a number of challenges, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs invasion. He brought youthful energy and enthusiasm to the position, which many believed made him the best man for the job. With that being said, he also battled with a number of personal issues that made people doubt whether or not he really should have such a powerful role in the political world. From a very young age, John struggled with poor health. When he was at school, various conditions and illnesses often kept him home for weeks at a time. However, his health battle became an even more serious problem in his professional years, as it was not ideal for the world to see the President of the United States weak and sickly as often as he was. One of the most problematic diseases that Kennedy developed was Addison's disease. This rare disorder affects the adrenal glands, causing a decrease in hormone production. As a result, John experienced symptoms such as chronic fatigue, severe weight loss, and low blood sugar. Many people thought that this made him unfit to run the country. However, Addison's disease was not the only serious health condition that he had to worry about. John also struggled with chronic back pain caused by a spinal injury he picked up during his time in the Navy. In order to ease his severe discomfort, he underwent multiple risky surgeries, including the removal of 2 lumbar discs. However, none of the surgeries were ever particularly successful. He would go on to deal with the back pain for the rest of his life. Gastrointestinal issues such as colitis were constantly getting in the way of Kennedy's work and social life. This condition led to intense abdominal pain, and to help alleviate the symptoms, he had to follow a strict diet. Despite his health issues, Kennedy did his best to maintain an active and rigorous schedule as president, often pushing himself to the physical limits. On top of this, he did his best to keep his health concerns private, only sharing details with close family, work associates, and friends. In the end, Kennedy's poor health played a partial role in his death. He was prescribed a number of medications which likely led to his blood clotting disorder. This was a factor in his eventual assassination. Today, doctors use John's behavior towards his health as an example of why looking after yourself is so important, especially if you're prone to illnesses. During his time as president, Kennedy often ignored the warning signs, as he believed his work was more important and that he had to push through. While many see this as admirable, others believe that he was just making the situation worse for himself and the country. On top of John's many illnesses and ailments, the Kennedy family experienced a number of misfortunes that would massively impact their lives. In fact, the prominent American family had such bad luck throughout their time that the public coined the phrase, the Kennedy curse. This curse was said to have begun with the death of the family's oldest son, Joseph Kennedy Jr., who was killed during World War II. From then on, the parents would go on to lose a number of their children, including JFK himself. In total, 2 of the Kennedy brothers would be assassinated. One would lose his life in a plane crash, and others succumbed to illness, violence, or peculiar accidents. One particular tragedy did not lead to death, but rather a heartbreaking story that shows us exactly how little understanding the world used to have when it came to mental health. Rose Kennedy was always considered different by her family members. The eldest Kennedy daughter frequently experienced mood swings and seizures as a young child, something that deeply concerned her parents, as having a mentally ill child did not adhere to the perfect family image that they were trying so desperately to portray. As a result, her father arranged for her to undergo a prefrontal lobotomy at just 23 years of age. Essentially, this procedure involved a metal rod being inserted through the nose into the prefrontal lobe of the brain. According to doctors at the time, even though this is now proven to be completely untrue, the lobotomy would permanently alter the functioning of the brain of the patient, ridding them of any mental illnesses. As you would expect, the procedure only left Rose with permanent brain damage. The prefrontal lobe is associated with personality. After the lobotomy, the Kennedy daughter became a completely different person, often showing no emotion. More so, it left her unable to speak coherently. The Kennedy family did their best to hide this procedure from the world. For the majority of her life, Rose was cared for at a mental institute called St. Coletta, far away from the public eye. Some people believe that this curse is the result of a vengeful spirit who had been wronged by the Kennedys while still alive. Other, probably more realistic members of the public attribute their bad luck and misfortunes to the high-risk lifestyle of the rich and famous. Whatever the reason, supernatural or not, behind these tragic and premature deaths, there's no denying that the Kennedy curse will forever remain a part of the family's legacy. On November 22, 1963, John F. Kennedy tragically met his end while riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza, Texas. The 35th president was shot and killed by an assassin by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald, who was arrested shortly after the incident. The assassination of JFK is arguably one of the most controversial and significant events to occur in U.S. history. Rumors of multiple high-up organizations being involved in the death of Kennedy started to spread. To this day, there is still speculation over the real reason for Oswald wanting him dead. According to official investigations, Lee acted alone in his mission, which didn't sit right with many people. It simply didn't make sense that one man could pull off the assassination of the president, and in such a public setting as well, without any assistance. Before Oswald could stand trial, he too was murdered by a nightclub owner by the name of Jack Ruby, who had ties to organized crime groups. This sparked even more controversy amongst the public. The death of JFK had a major impact on American politics and society as a whole. The country's sense of security had been shattered. On top of this, the optimism that John brought his people during a time of fear had been lost. As a result of his passing, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as the 36th POTUS. However, the nation was still mourning the loss of the youthful politician who had once brought them hope. After all these years, John F. Kennedy is still remembered for his charismatic leadership style and progressive politics. He was unlike any president that the country had seen before, as he displayed a clear sense of hope and enthusiasm that he could make things better for the American people. Kennedy achieved a lot as president. One of his most notable acts was when he advocated for racial equality, pushing for laws to end discrimination and segregation in the country. John successfully navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis and established the Peace Corps, an organization that sent hundreds of American volunteers to third world countries in order to establish peace. He also played an important role in the space race, even though his tragic end would prevent him from watching the first man step foot on the moon. While there is no denying the positive impact John had on his country, he and his family sparked a number of controversies during their time in power. For this reason, there were people who lost faith in him, including his eventual killer. However, JFK's legacy would live on through the creation of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, as well as the airport named after him. There was also an award dedicated to the former president, which is granted to those who show courage and integrity in their public service.